like, what the hell's going on here? What's going on in this game? Yeah. Like within 5 minutes. It's like, what the fuck?
Should they have? Do you feel like The Last of Us Part 1 left off in a great spot? And do you think they should have had a sequel that came out?
There's something about watching the animals, die, and then not only them dying, but then listening to the NPCs get really upset about it. Like that hurts way more than, fucking blowing up Mateo's head and then listening to them.
If they were to make a sequel, maybe they shouldn't have done it with those characters. Maybe they should have advanced it 50 years into the future, where civilization actually could have been.
We're gonna talk about The Last of Us Part 2. Abby Strikes Back. You did.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Now we're going.
Hey everyone.
Hey, what's up, guys?
What's up,
everyone.
fellas?
Hi.
Listen, everyone, please hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, leave a
Doing
comment.
it the ASMR voice this time.
Yeah, leave a comment. Hit that like button and subscribe. You won't be disappointed.
Hit the bell to receive
Or you will.
notifications.
Our new subscribers
sitting.
touch the bacon.
You're sitting in a beautiful meadow by a calm creek, hitting that subscribe button.
Yeah, let me just close my eyes and envision this.
Hit that subscribe button.
Joe's asleep.
Hit that like button.
Okay.
And we're down to 4 for this one.
All right. Well, hey, welcome everyone back to our podcast where we talk about video games, other plethora of stuff, and
Sometimes life advice.
life advice, medical advice,
Financial advice. No, I'm joking.
financial advice,
This is
therapy
not financial
sessions,
advice.
No.
scam advice. I mean, so I
Today
know
we're
we're going to
talking-
talk about. Oh, go ahead, man.
Yeah, go
I
ahead.
would
I knew
say
somebody.
we're going to talk
Today we're
about
talk about
The Last of
The
Us
Last of
Part
Us Part
2.
2.
We still need to
Abby
introduce
Strikes
ourselves,
Back.
fellas.
Abby Strikes Back.
And then
We still
Ellie
need-
Strikes Back. And
We
then
still need
Abby
to do
Strikes Back
introductions,
again.
bro.
And then,
No one knows who we are.
oh yeah. That's true.
Alphabetical order.
I'm
go.
Joe.
Semi-alphabetical.
All right,
My
I don't
first
know.
name or
Who's
last
first?
name?
First name or what? You're going last name,
We'll
first
do-
name, what?
We'll do last name.
Whichever we have on the screen.
What's up, guys? I'm
Name
Fresh.
Hey, I'm Blake.
I'm Danny.
I'm Raj, aka the Cancer Bane, aka the Bend Out Ghoul, aka the Screaming. Forget it. I'm Raj.
And I'm Joe.
All right. So yeah, The Last of Us Part 2.
A game
you
that
haven't checked
nobody
out our
has
video-
strong feelings on.
Yeah, if you haven't checked out our video of Last of Us Part 1, make sure to check that out if that's something you want to see, because we're going to talk about Part 2 mostly here. And I will say,
No, we're gonna tell them to
I
watch
have
it.
not played. Yeah, put it side by side so you're listening at them at the same time.
Yeah.
But Last of Us Part 2, I would say, huge. I think question right away. Maybe we can save it for the end. Is should they have made a sequel? Should they have? Do you feel like The Last of Us Part 1 left off in a great spot? And do you think they should have had a sequel that came out?
We should all just answer individually. I think just straight yes or no, and then we'll go into why we feel the way we do. So, start with you, Raj.
No. I feel like the ending. I feel like the ending of the game was beautiful. It may have some people argue, but it answers the question: what happens after that? They didn't have a cure. Do they all live happily ever after? I just think it was set up in a way that makes the player kind of think in their own way what happens after that. Kind of like it's up to the player to decide what goes on after that. I felt like the game ended beautifully, and felt like it could have just left off there and would have been a classic game. The sequel does, I guess, I don't know if I haven't beaten it yet, but I don't know if it really answers any more questions that we have in terms of what's been going in terms of things that were left over from the first game into the second, because the second game revs off pretty high and fast with certain character deaths, quote unquote, and all that. But that's just my take. I felt like the game ended really great. The first one ended up on a good level and kind of left it to the gamer to decide what happened after that. But I'll let you guys go ahead. Give your thoughts.
Frazier?
So I am about 2 hours into the game. Not personally playing it. I'm watching a very detailed playthrough of it. I just got to the point where I guess if we're going to be talking about it, there's going to be spoilers. Where Joel dies.
What? My favorite guy.
What?
Oh my god.
Joe dies? Who's Joe? Joel. Oh.
Joel.
Yep. I have absolutely no idea who Abby is. And that's about as far as I got. But more so to answer your question there, Raj. It looks like just more of The Last of Us, which not isn't necessarily a bad thing. I just don't know how the rest of the game's going to play out. Obviously, we're going to get into that, so I'm going to fill in some blanks here with all of you. But
well, how do you feel story-wise, like where The Last of Us Part 1 left off? Regardless of not playing much of Last of Us 2, how do you feel?
Yeah. Personally, I feel like the story was wrapped up nice, and it left you at a point where you wanted more, but you didn't necessarily need it, I feel. Maybe not. If they were to make a sequel, maybe they shouldn't have done it with those characters. Maybe they should have advanced it like 50 years into the future, like where civilization actually could have been. Because I think it's only been like 4 years after the
4 or 5 years, something like that.
Yeah. Is it 5? Is it 5? Okay.
I thought it was 5, and then I was playing it.
It's 5.
I started playing it. It said 4, but
Okay.
it might have been. I don't know. It's confusing.
Well, Ellie's 14 in the first game, and then she's 19 in part 2.
It's not a long time, I guess, is what.
Yeah, but I feel like she would, because the first game takes place over the course of a year, so she'd probably be 15 by the time the game's over. They just didn't like specify, but it doesn't matter. She's either 18 or 19. She's somewhere in that ballpark.
I feel like not a significant amount of time has changed to warrant the same characters. At least for right now, because it just feels like more of the same. If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Yeah. How about you, Delaney?
So, for me, the short answer is no. I don't think they should have made a sequel, but it's a lot more complicated than that, because I do still really like The Last of Us 2 in many ways, and kind of hate it in others, which obviously makes it a very interesting game to talk about. But my feelings on it as a sequel and whether it was necessary. Have any of you guys ever seen the movie Stand By Me?
Yep.
Yes.
Love that movie.
I know, me too. It's one of my favorites. But do you remember the scene where the main character, he's like a little writer boy, and he's talking to his friends. He's telling them a funny story about this fat kid who gets bullied, and he goes to like a pie eating contest, and he like gets revenge on all the people that wronged him by like making everybody throw up at the pie eating contest. And it's a really cute, funny little short story that he tells his friends. And then the little fat, snarky kid who reminds me of me when I was a kid is like, well, what happens then? And the kid's like, what do you mean? That's the end of the story. And he's just like, well, like, does he get revenge on his dad? Does he go home and like shoot his dad with a gun? And he like makes it like go on way longer than it needs to be. And to me, that's kind of like any sequel to The Last of Us would be, because it's like you had this perfect singular story, and you left so many like possibilities of where these characters can go, but you finished the story, and the possibilities of where it could go were more interesting than any definitive answer, I feel. So I do feel like this would be if that little fat kid wrote the sequel to The Last of Us when you already had such a perfect conclusion. But again, I do think it does really good things. Obviously, I'm playing it right now again. I've beaten it before when it came out, but I'm playing it now again for the PS5 upgrade. And I'm enjoying it more than I did the first time, for sure. And I'm sure we'll get more into that. Moving on, either Blake or Danny. Which one do you want to go?
Go ahead, Blake.
Sure, I'll go. All right. Yeah, I don't. In a word, no, I don't. I didn't think that a sequel is necessary. For many of the reasons that have already been said. Yeah, it was a fantastic ending for The Last of Us Part 1. And yeah, that does the other thing. I really don't like how Naughty Dog decided to go in and retroactively change the title just to fit, because we have a Part 2 now. When it sounds like because like they might have not possibly even planned on having a sequel, because I know that was like at that time, I could be wrong, but Naughty Dog was going through some instability, and that was that project it was a kind of a sink or swim type of situation. Maybe not necessarily for Naughty Dog as a whole, but like, hey, we might have to scale back quite a bit if this thing doesn't work out for us. But anyway, yeah, I fully agree with that little Stand By Me story, actually, Joe, that you said, because it was a fantastic ending. It was a perfect ending in my opinion, and it's something that you didn't need to mess around with. It's like it's as if like, okay, to have another comparison from a different form of media, like the ending of Inception, where we see the little top going around, spinning. It's like, do we want Christopher Nolan to make an Inception 2 or something like that? Like, no. It's a fantastic ending. It leaves the audience to decide what they think it should be, and I think that's one of the great things about certain, films, books, video games, stuff like that. Now, on the flip side of it, this might be more not realistic, but like from a business side, yeah, I can totally see why they wanted to do a part 2, because it was so massively successful. They're like, hey, let's make part 2, get some more money.
Yeah.
We have this great IP. They already had done it with like Jack and Daxter, Uncharted. Although Uncharted 1 kind of sucked. Sorry, Danny.
It was a fun groundwork.
Yeah, it was. We'll talk more about that later.
Yeah, but no,
we can do a whole video on Uncharted for sure.
We could. Yeah, I don't think that a sequel was necessary, and I think that it's. I mean, don't get me wrong, I really enjoyed Last of Us Part 2. That was not to get into too many things, but hey, I think that was released in May of 2020. Things were extremely different in the world at the time. And that was like, as dark as that game is, I was so excited to play that thing. It was like something to look forward to in like a really dark time in my life. But anyway,
this miserable, sad, dark,
yeah, I know, right?
Brutal game.
Well, it took me out of reality. It put me in a different, separate reality full of crap and depressing stuff.
What happened in 2020 that was so bad?
There's this like little virus thing that went around.
On the computer? That's crazy, man.
Yeah.
Dude, my computer got so messed up.
It was Y2K.
Yeah.
It wasn't cancer.
Y2K actually happened.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah, that's my piece on that.
Daniel, so kind of going for the argument backwards. So what do you guys think there's...
Danny?
I'm sorry. Sorry.
That's all right.
We need one yes, and I already know it's going to be a yes from him.
Well, I am going to say yes, but I'm also going to have a big asterisk next to it, because while I do agree that the ending of the first game is perfect in the way it ended and wrapped up that story, I also trust that Naughty Dog only works on stuff that they want to do, because that's their whole thing. Like Neil Druckmann's constantly said that they're not going to work on something unless they feel like they have a story to tell, or that they can do something interesting to progress the characters and their relationships and what have you. So, yeah, like I said, yes with the asterisk. If I was any other person, I would say no, and I totally get why people don't think there should have been a sequel. I was just happy to kind of get, well, as happy as I could get in that miserable game. I was happy to get back into that world and that character and see what they explored and kind of what they were able to, basically what they were able to do with it. I only played the game once when it first came out, and it was one of those games because it was so miserable and just like I couldn't find it in my heart to go back to it immediately. Like I tried to, but I'm just like, I don't think I can sit through this again because it just, you know, emotionally I didn't want to go through it at that time. Having picked up Remastered, you know, I'm going to get back into it again, but you know, I obviously had a lot of, you know, discussions about it and, you know, talked about it. And, you know, most people don't think there should have been an end or a sequel because it was perfect. But I also trust the developer to, you know, if they feel like there's another story to tell, if they feel like they should do this, you know, then do it. I also know that, you know, Sony being their publisher, if, you know, Naughty Dog goes to them to be like, hey, we want to do this, they're going to say yes or no, which is also why, you know, with The Last of Us Remastered, I mean, that in part, that's Sony saying you should do this or what have you. And they kind of have to pay the bills. And, you know, what you were saying, Blake, and this is kind of slightly off topic, regarding Naughty Dog and like the status of their company at the time. Basically, with The Last of Us, they split off to do The Last of Us part, the original, and then Uncharted 3. And then Amy Hennig was working on Uncharted 4. They got pretty far into development, but then there was that whole controversy where she left and went to go to work on a Star Wars game, which inevitably got canceled, which that was a whole nother can of worms where the internet, you know, didn't have the full story and, you know, like she was forced out and all this nonsense, which wasn't the case. It was that she got this opportunity to go work on a Star Wars game and she loves Star Wars. I mean, I wouldn't fault anyone for going to do that, but yeah. And then then when Neil Druckmann and Bruce Straley took over, the creators of The Last of Us, they were kind of on a crunch to basically redo this whole game with the vision that they wanted to do, and then that released, and then they immediately went into making The Last of Us Part 2 after that because they again felt like there was a story to tell there. So that's my little off the cuff tangent for that. But yes, I do think they should have did a sequel because that's what they wanted to do, and I'm all for it. But I also know that the ending was perfect, and if they left it there, I would have been completely content with it.
Yeah,
No,
I think there's all asterisks around, even with our no's, because I do have really good things to say about the game. It's not like a Toy Story 4 situation where I think it's a fucking disgrace to this game's legacy.
Still have not
like
seen that movie either.
Don't do it. Don't fucking do it. That is a perfect example of them
no
being
point.
like, we had a story to tell. No, you didn't. Disney wanted another Toy Story movie, and they made it.
They wanted more money.
Sucked. It's one of the worst movies I've ever seen. But The Last of Us 2 is not one of the worst games I've ever played. I think one thing we should get out of the way first, there are a ton of people who fucking hate this game because they're homophobic or sexist or transphobic, and those people aren't worth talking about because anything. And like, and I'd say that most of the people who have a problem with this game are not that way. They're not assholes who think, you know, like, oh, go woke, go broke, and all that bullshit. But just to get that out of the way, that is not a legitimate argument against the game. But the people who do have legitimate arguments against the game do deserve to have that attention. And a lot of even their arguments have holes in them, which we'll definitely get into when we talk more about the story. But yeah, just to get that out of the way, that is 100% like not legitimate. Those people aren't worth talking about. So, you know, you can just like fuck those people, skip right over them.
And to add on to that too, it's all these people with a sense of entitlement, like, you know, these characters and these stories all belong to them, and like, you didn't do this the way I wanted you to, and you did this and I don't like it, so I'm just gonna go off on these, you know, phobic inspired rampages and, you know, threaten all these developers and these actors and, you know, these people because I'm a piece of shit and you know, I'm a spoiled little fucking brat.
Fucking Laura Bailey got so many death threats because she played a fucking character. Because she played a character who killed a fake killed a fake person, and it just goes to show how many of these people are just they don't live in reality.
Which character did she with? Abby?
She was Abby, yeah.
She was
Okay.
Abby.
Yeah.
So I
She got more
basically
death
stayed
threats
under a
than
rock
well.
on
Neil
all this.
Druckmann and Norman. Go ahead, Joe. Sorry.
I basically stayed under a rock on all this because I did intend to play it, but since we're talking about it in a podcast format, obviously things are gonna get spoiled for me, but which I'm fine with. But so being completely radio silent about all of it, even like going to the effect of like if I even saw like a screenshot, I immediately scrolled past it on social media. I just completely. I just completely went AWOL on it. What, from an outsider's perspective, what is the major issue with the game that everyone hates outside of Ellie being a lesbian?
Let me pull up the list of.
This will take a while. Let me get my mile-long scroll.
So, for real. So the main thing, obviously, is the fact that Joel dies, period, and the way he dies, I would say, is the main thing. And that in and of itself isn't an illegitimate argument. I mean, I kind of figure most people would have assumed that he would die either at some point in the game, but I think a lot of people were mad that he was killed in such a brutal way, such a disrespectful way, by, I hate to say it, by a woman. That is also a huge part of it. I feel like if Abby instead was a guy named Abner, people wouldn't have been as mad about it. I also hate to say it, or if she was traditionally hot, I feel like people wouldn't have been as mad about it too.
Yeah.
And not like super buff,
Yeah, she's definitely cut. She's definitely cut.
She cut.
I picked up on that in the couple of cutscenes that I saw her in. So
they call her Abby for a reason. But yeah, that's a big reason why. One of the reasons that is not legitimate, because it goes to show that when you saw those review bombings on Metacritic, which this game changed Metacritic, they made it so you had to wait like 3 days before you can post there anymore.
Really?
But
I didn't know
because
that.
people
I
were
didn't
just
know that
like
either.
going at it because the game was
Jesus.
leaked ahead of time. And when you don't actually play the game and just read bullet points on a list, you're not really getting the full picture. A lot of people were like, Joel never would have given his name to these rando people. Like, he wouldn't have made such a stupid mistake. And I'm like, first of all, it's Tommy that does it. It's Tommy that does it, who is already established that he is kind of a fuck up. He's kind of naive. Joel had to protect him for like years after shit went down initially. So he's the one that initially said, I'm Tommy, this is Joel. Eventually, Joel does give his name, but it's after... It's already after he knows something is up. Like, at this point, he's like, what the fuck am I gonna do? Am I gonna shoot my way out of, this room full of, like, I'm surrounded by, like, 10 people right now. And, just saying his first name isn't necessarily dangerous, per se. I don't know. That argument always seemed completely stupid to me, because...
Yeah.
And I can also
it's just
get
saying
into
your
that
first
too.
name.
Well, that's the big thing too, is that they knew where they were, like where, they had an idea or whatever, the settlement that Joel was there. And, like you said, Tommy is the initial one who engaged in the conversation and gave his name. And he's like, this is me and my brother, I'm Tommy. And then that's where Joel gives his name. But again, you have to realize with Joel,
Tommy says this is Joel. Just to clarify,
he does
Tommy's
say
the one
Joel.
that says
Okay.
this is Joel.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's just a very
They
common
didn't really get.
misconception.
I just feel like they didn't get, like, because there's that pause where and he's like, I'm Joel, and then that's where the room goes like dead quiet, and that's where
that happens second. When they first meet Abby, Tommy's like, "Are you okay?" Because I just played it the other night, and he's like, "Are you okay?" And then he's just like, "I'm Tommy. This is my brother Joel," and that's when Abby's like, "Oh shit, this is the dude."
I can actually. It probably even goes back further than that, because when they were escaping, Tommy's yelling Joel, like they're all yelling at each other when they're escaping from the the horde, And so I guess even there, like, 'cause
Yeah.
I think there's even a moment there where she like has that realization on her face, where she's like, "Oh, I think this might be it."
Yeah, when
So-
you're in a rough situation, like a intense situation, sometimes you make some dumb slip up like that.
Yeah.
So like everyone's saying that was like a betrayal of Joel's character is the most dramatic
That's so-
fucking thing you could say. It's so stupid, and that's a dumb argument. And of course, another big thing, going back to your initial question, Fresh, about why people hate it. They also hate the fact that you play as Abby for a good chunk of the game, roughly close to half of it. You do play as her.
That was one of my favorite parts, by the way.
Same, which
I
we'll
was
get to
dumbstruck.
obviously, and it was a very bold choice, one that you just like, even if you don't like, you have to kind of respect the audacity, to do that. Not since Super Mario RPG, where they actually had you play as Bowser, the man who killed Mario's parents. I don't know, but like it's
That was Jack
Golf
Black.
Club.
exactly. But it's a very, obviously a very bold choice, and one that was very purposeful, which again we'll get to when we talk about the themes of the game. But it's all these things that there's an explanation for when it comes to the problems that people had with it, and very often the actual reasons for those problems are very simple if you would just played the fucking game instead of just read them on a leak and review bombed it as soon as you had the chance to, because you don't have a life. So, that's basically what a lot of it boiled down to. Again, a lot of the arguments are legitimate, which we'll get to as we just discuss the story.
And there's a lot
to be fair, this happened in 2020, right?
Yes.
So a lot of people had a lot of time on their hands.
That is also true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They were hiding from
but
that
yeah,
Y2K
there's
virus.
all the hateful stuff too, like people making assumptions, like saying that Abby was a man and all that stuff. Just all the hateful bullshit that came along with the lead up to that game, and like obviously to this day, people are still, but it's kind of died down. I haven't seen anything about the remastered. Well, I've seen people saying like, "Oh, you shouldn't make the stop remastering old stuff," and blah 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 blah. But I haven't seen anything about the show yet, which is kind of nice because, I really feel for Caitlin Dever and what she's going to have to go through leading up to.
Oh, that girl's she's gonna have a rough go of it. I do think it's gonna be less bad than the game A, because people who watch TV, not to say that they're all good, decent people, a lot of people gave
Gamers are terrible.
Yeah, gamers are the worst. People who watch TV aren't great either. The woman who played Skylar White on Breaking Bad and the kid who played Joffrey on Game of Thrones still got their fair share of like threats and shit, but not quite as bad as what a lot of people in the gaming community get. But also, I don't know. I think it's a lot of time has passed since then. So I do think that a lot of the initial hate for the game, it's kind of boiled back up with the remaster, but I think a lot of people have cooled off on the game ever since, so tensions aren't as high. Again, the show could reignite that. Who fucking knows? We'll see. We'll see when it happens. But I just hope for the poor actress's sake, because she's a good actor. I've seen her in a lot of stuff. That this doesn't like make her like scared to go out at night or in the day or be in any other show or movie.
Do you think they're going to go with the same direction as killing Joel off?
Yeah, they
definitely
they said they're
Yeah.
keeping with the same direction of the show. They might add in some new stuff, which cool, because the stuff the one big thing they added in season 1 was incredible. There's a lot they could do. They could explore, and I'll I'll get into that later when we talk about the main story, because there's some stuff that I think they could do to make the show even better. And
I agree. There's going to be some things they have to change, because more so than the first game, the second game is a lot more gameplay focused. The story is still there, obviously, and it's still very good in places and questionable in others. But they're going to have to be either sequences that they really expand upon, because the show can't be, especially because they said that it's going to be 2 seasons, not just 1 for Last of Us Part 2. And there can't just be full episodes of Ellie proning through the long grass and killing, Kevin, Elizabeth, Mateo,
Kevin.
like, and everyone's screaming out their names. But they're so yeah, there's definitely gonna be some things they do have to change, not necessarily change, but expand upon, or make it so it fits the medium better. But I think they're gonna mostly keep it. The skeleton's going to be basically the same. I feel. I don't think they're going to change anything significant. There is one thing I think they might change, and that's I feel like they might not kill Joel like in the first episode. I feel like they might wait until like episode like 2 or 3 or something.
I feel like if they kill him off episode 1, that'd be like a big shocker, and may draw.
It would be a big shocker. And so if they do, then
No, Joe.
that's ballsy.
Joe, it's gonna be episode 3, and I'll tell you why.
Why?
HBO subs, HBO Max subs.
Oh.
Yeah, so people are gonna pay for month 2, which episode 3 would technically like come out in, and they're gonna be locked in for the month. So they'll at least get 2 full months of subs out of this.
That is true.
It's not a bad way to think about it, honestly.
So you heard it here.
And
first. Joel dies in the show, episode 3. I'm calling it right now.
Let's put the money down. Let's do it. No, I agree with that, and not just because of like expanding the story or anything like that, but because you got fucking Pedro Pascal as Joel, and I mean like spoilers too. He's gonna appear again in the show. It's not like he's gonna be out of it because they have so many flashbacks and sequences with him still in it, which are some of the best parts of Last of Us 2. But a lot of people are going to be pissed because their favorite daddy was killed off in the first episode, and they're going to stop watching. But if it happens a little later on, they'll at least have that subscription still, like you said, Joe. Fresh. But and then maybe we'll begrudgingly still keep watching, even though daddy's gone. So we'll see how it goes.
It'll be sunk cost fallacy at that point. So
exactly, yeah. Once you're a few episodes in, you do kind of have the sunk cost.
I agree
for sure.
But
yeah.
All right, on to the
now.
I guess we should start the game. No, what do you have to say, Fresh?
Before we get more into the story, let's talk a little bit about the game itself. Which I personally feel is not just a small improvement over the original, but like a substantial one, as far as like making it an engaging stealth survival, action adventure game. The first one I mentioned in the last video, I thought gameplay's fine. It's not great. It's not bad. It's pretty mid essentially, but it's the story that elevates everything. And here the story is again very hit or miss in some places, but the gameplay is consistently fantastic. And just playing it right now, over the last 2 days I've already put 10 hours into it, and I'm just having a blast. And maybe this is not Neil Druckmann's intention, but I find the game just incredibly fun to play. Like not just like a good intense game, but just like how responsive the gunplay is. Like when you kill somebody in this game, it's not like in other games. Like if you place a trip mine in another game, that enemy is going to like their body's going to go flying like and then they're going to land and they might have a little blood on them or something. Yeah. But in this fucking game, I placed a trip mine the other day or yesterday and just watched a guy literally get blown in half and like found his top half just like with his guts hanging out. And I'm just like, Jesus fucking Christ.
It's very satisfying. The
gameplay
is very satisfying.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just having such a great time doing that. And I know the game's supposed to make you feel bad. I mentioned before, I find it funny every time you hear the same name shouted for like a different NPC. Like I swear to God, I got like my first playthrough at least 5 Mateos in that run.
Why are the names being shouted out? Is it
it's to make you feel bad?
Is it people that she knows that she's killing?
So in some cases, yeah. I mean, it's very rare that you just like find a random NPC that you kill that like you see in Abby's side of the game. but it's not. First of all, I should say, Joe, it's not Ellie shouting their names. It's like the guards. So like if you
The other
kill
NPCs.
a guard and they find their
Oh,
they find
they
their body
They
and
react,
they're like, oh my
okay.
god, they killed Blake. Sorry, Blake.
Ah!
And, and it's a way to like immerse you, because that is what would happen in a lot of scenarios, because you would just say they killed a guard. These are like for the most part like your friends and colleagues.
Yeah.
So, and they even do it for the dogs, which is fucked up because I killed
That
a
one
dog
is
the other
worse.
day,
That's way
which-
worse than the actual humans dying. And I talked about that with Crystal yesterday. Like there's something about watching the animals, die, and then not only them dying, but then listening to the NPCs like get really upset about it. Like that hurts way more than
It does.
fucking blowing up Mateo's head and then
I
listening.
killed a dog, and they were like, they killed Bear, and I was just like, oh my god, I feel so much worse than killing Mateo.
As you're shooting the guy in the head.
Yeah.
Oh
yeah,
my God,
I
Gary!
think it was. I think I saw like in an interview or something related to the game that I think it was Neil Druckmann. He's like, well, you don't have to make those choices like to kill the dog. And I thought,
There's one dog you have to kill.
Yeah, yes, there is the
Only
one.
one.
Yes. But I thought, dude, you put up like these really difficult pathings for the player to go through. It's like, no, that was just like a poor choice.
To be devil's
Is that on the
advocate with that,
difficulty level
though,
too?
It is the difficulty level, I think, as well. But at the same time, it's like, do you like? Why'd you have to put it in the first place?
I mean, to
Well,
play
you have to
devil's
kill the dogs,
advocate,
'cause
I'm
the
all
dogs
about
will
them
smell you.
doing it. I'm all about them adding that sort of, giving you that choice. At the same time, as far as like the character goes, you're playing as Ellie, and she wants to,
Yeah.
she says it in the first ever reveal trailer. She's like, I'm going to find it. I'm going to kill every last one of them. So you can go ahead and just straight up murder them, but you also have the option where, you don't want to mess around with that. Just go ahead and run through, hide, and then just get to where you need to go, which I felt was a little better in this one compared to like previous Naughty Dog games where you get forced into these action sequences. So I kind of like
I think
They
that's
happen
a
a couple of
cop-out
times.
answer from Naughty Dog.
they do happen
honestly.
a couple times.
They do
yes,
happen
for
a
sure.
couple of.
Yes,
They're
but I
annoying
feel
each
there's
time because it's
more.
always the same. You go through a door and there's a guy waiting there and he fucking hits you, and it's just kind of bullshit because you're playing a survival game where like ammo is scarce, at least if you're playing on like normal or higher.
Not my
And-
playthroughs.
Yeah, if you're playing on easy mode, you can go in like fucking Doom.
Raining
But
bullets.
if you're playing on like, if you're playing normal or especially the harder difficulties, you do have to like really, really save your ammo. But they put you in these scenarios where you have to use it, and it's just kind of frustrating each time it happens because you're like, well, it's not my fault. I didn't purposely not purposely, but it wasn't like my own mistake. It was a scripted sequence. And again, they're pretty rare. I think in the 10 hours I played so far, it's only happened like 3 times. But they do stick out, when you're really scrounging for ammo, really trying to make each shot count, and then you just have to unload like all your shotgun blasts because you're in a room full of like 4 guys now, and it wasn't your fault. So parts like that are really frustrating.
will
or the
say
rat, or the Rat King.
Or the Rat King.
I will say my
That
favorite
sucks.
part of that, where they have a scripted sequence, is the one that made me shit my pants the most, and it's where you're by the upgrade bench, the workbench, and whenever you enter
that
a
part,
save room or an upgrade bench, that's your safe zone. You have a moment to you feel like you're safe, but these motherfuckers decide to, as soon as you go to interact with the bench, someone just comes up behind you and just assault you basically and try to murder you. I was like, that made me shit my pants so hard. But I also saw that you can apparently lay down like a trip mine or something behind you so that the guy just walks into it and just explodes, so it doesn't even like it changes.
That's
that
really
sort of thing,
cool.
too. Yeah, because I saw that, I was like,
I did not know that.
motherfucker.
That pissed me off
was
so
really
much when that happened yesterday. I was so mad. Just like,
Well,
I shit
Joe,
my
my
pants.
safe,
I was like,
you-
my safe space.
Fraser, you played 2 hours of it just recently.
Yeah, as in like earlier this morning.
Okay, so just in your first 2 hours, I mean, what are the things that stood out to you the most about the gameplay?
It looks from what I saw, it looks very, very linear. Is that true? Is that like
At first, it is. There is a sequence.
like
I was texting
walking
you guys about
simulator
this.
esque? So
Yeah, but there is a sequence where it's like a huge open area where you get to like go into like optional buildings and stuff, and that's like one of my favorite parts of the game. That happens pretty early on, and then it's never quite that open again. But each area is pretty open, and there are optional buildings to go in, and all of these things. So it's kind of like it's not open world or anything, obviously.
Yeah.
It's still pretty linear, but it does like really reward you for exploring. You know, there's plenty of hidden areas that you're not necessarily have to find. But I'm doing a lot more exploring this time around versus the first time where I was just trying to get through the story. So I'm definitely appreciating the more again, not completely open, but still pretty linear, but some branching paths here and there.
I compare it to
like that
Halo
design
in
a
that
lot.
regard, where basically you have, when you get into like the stealth or combat sequence, it basically opens up into this gigantic playground where you have a lot of options on how you want to approach each encounter. And then, there are some exploration segments where you have different buildings that you can check out and things like that. But yeah, that's kind of the one thing I liked most about this game, is that it opened up the encounters to allow for a little more variety, but they still kind of kept that difficulty, and that sort of, I guess that's it. The difficulty, it still made you feel like it wasn't super easy. Like I beat the first game 100%, including on grounded mode and grounded plus, and I am very intimidated by this run because it was not fun playing the first game, because like I said, there's the dam where I had a brick and like one rifle round or a revolver round, so it's like, well, how the hell am I going to do this? Somehow I did, but this game is much more intimidating because of how open it is, and just how like the enemy AI is much more intelligent in this game than it is in the first game too. Like they're much more hostile and aggressive. They're a little smarter. So it's very I'm nervous to try to play it, especially now you included permadeath mode, which I'm like, well, I don't think I'm ever going to do that because I don't think maybe I'm underestimating myself or overestimating the game, but still, like it's very intimidating. Like the game has very big segments of just you feel intimidated to what you're doing or going through. Especially the Rat King one was also one that made me shit my pants. I was like, dear God, why? but yeah, so that's kind of.
I knew what they.
Go ahead, Raj.
They built that up.
Mhm.
I interrupted you. Sorry.
what's that?
No, finish.
No, I thought Raj said something, but it was Blake. But yeah. Anyway, back to you. Go ahead, Joe.
Joe, go ahead, Fraser. I think I know which one you're talking to.
That's okay. So this game, there's no PC port, right? It's just straight up PS4.
Not yet.
No.
Yeah, not yet.
Not yet. Okay. It looked like visually, it looks really good.
It's incredible.
Yeah, for a game that came out late in the PS4's life. Whether it looks like that on the stock PS4, I have no idea, but I assume
It did.
It did.
It ran at 60, but not at 60. It ran at 30. 30, but it was still like visually incredible. Like I'm playing obviously on the PS5 upgrade now at 60, and like I can't remember it looking significantly worse than what it looks like on the PS5. But playing it now on the PS5, it's just like one of the best looking games you can ever play. That's one. Considering how much fucking crunch Naughty Dog made their staff do, it better look fucking good. But it's you can't deny it. There's even like sequences in the game which I find a little masturbatory, but where there's like one sequence early on where Dina's like, look at this view. And like Ellie comes over and you just like look at the beautiful draw distance of the mountains in the background. And it's just yeah, Naughty Dog, you made a fucking really pretty game. You don't gotta jerk yourself off about
that's
it.
What that's what Uncharted did all the time, though. Like that was like
they do that all the time.
Every time.
Or
Which made a little more sense.
Especially in 4.
Like, as many times as they did, because you're an adventure, you're like, holy shit, look at that view. But
yeah.
Anyway, yeah.
This one, there's nice moments like that, and it makes sense in the context. So
I will say that like Naughty Dog in particular is one of like the best at doing stuff like that, though. They're basically the head developer for Sony's ICE team, which is like the ones who work to push as much out of their consoles as possible, so they get like, you know, just get, I don't want to say it, like more involved with like the making the console or anything like that, but their whole thing is like they're the top tier that basically knows the ins and outs of the console. Then that's kind of why, you know, I don't want to say with Uncharted 1, for instance, but, you know, they had to basically make all those tech demo-y things work with Uncharted 1, like the gyroscope, the 6-axis controls and everything like that. And that's why that game suffered. But like with this one, I think they're putting a lot more effort into like taking some of like those tech demo-y things like with the PlayStation, like maybe the touchpad or the built-in speaker, but it's also allowing them to make more things more accessible for everyone too, which is a big thing I loved about this game. And just a lot of Sony's games is the amount of accessibility options that are included, so that you know, people that might not have been able to play this game before can, or if you're like me, I don't like having to smash on the triangle button when I'm trying to like raise up a ladder or get into a fight. I just like to press and hold it because I feel that's a little, it's not as bad on my controller. It doesn't wear it on my controller as much, but also, you know, those options, like I thought that's very cool and that they get to do all that. So
yeah, I think it was considered one of the most like innovative in terms of accessibility games, of like basically ever. Like I think it definitely won that at the Game Awards for accessibility. Yeah, it was really ahead of its time for that. And yeah, it's great game for that. Obviously, with lots of different like colorblind modes. The only one that I have to use is the navigation assist button, because as much as I really do enjoy the areas of this game, it's sometimes very hard to know where the fuck to go. But all you got to do is turn that on. You click a button, boom. You know, it points you in the exact right direction. So it's even just small things like that for someone like me who doesn't necessarily, you know, need those features. They're still nice to be there because you don't have to use them, you know. And that's why when people complain about accessibility in games, it's just like the stupidest, most ableist argument. It's just like, let people play games, you know, how they want. They paid $60-$70 for it. Yeah, dude, fuck you. But yeah, it's super accessible. You know, obviously, I mean, I think you can even like turn down the gore. Am I wrong? I think you.
Yep,
like,
you can turn off the blood and gore.
Yeah, like so when you blow up somebody, they just go to heaven. They fly to heaven.
they just straight up like A pose and then just like vanish.
T-pose. Or what's that one Simpsons joke? I'm going into my spaceship.
Going back to his home planet.
Yeah. That sort of thing.
That's good. That was good.
Sure.
But no,
but yeah, from a technical level, it's one of the most impressive games on the market.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah,
no
it definitely looks like they knew exactly how to like milk every last ounce of performance out of that console to get that game to look like the way it did.
Kind of what they did with the first one too, the PS3.
Yeah.
God, going back and playing that.
If you look at all the PlayStations, it looks weirdly like. I mean, obviously, if you played the part 1 now, that game looks obviously substantially better. It's really hard to tell the difference with these two per se. But I'm sure if you put them side by side, you notice the difference. But basically, like every console, like for the PlayStation, you could like point to a Naughty Dog game and say, this is like the best looking game on the console. Like the Jak and Daxter games and the PlayStation 2 are like the best, most impressive looking games. Not the best games, but as far as visuals go, you could argue that they're the ones that hold up the best on the PlayStation 2.
And the most technically
and then
impressive too.
Yeah, Jack 1, like that shit was like basically an open world game before open worlds for a platformer.
Oh yeah,
Like,
yeah, with
They have a
very
Guinness
very
Book of
minimal.
World Records. They have a
low-
Guinness record for it because it's the first seamless, unbroken open world game that
mhm.
Yep.
came out.
Yeah, dude. They've always known how to get the most out of the technology, and obviously it's no different here. And I'm just like fucking like very interested to see what they're gonna do for their first game on PS5. Like, I'm assuming it's gonna be a different IP now than Uncharted or.
Jack and Daxter 4.
If
Let's
they
go.
did that, I would shit my pants.
I would.
straight
I
up.
would.
They had
Oh my
3 games
God.
in development, I think, because they were working on the Factions Last of Us game, which got canceled, which I'm happy that they did it. I'm a little sad I don't get Last of Us multiplayer because I spent so much time playing Factions on PS4 and PS3. But they do have at least 2 or 3 IPs that they're working on right now. They haven't said what.
Seeing them
one of
do,
is
like-
brand new though.
Mhm. Seeing them do like a cartoony platformer though, like not necessarily Jack and Daxter, but to see what they would do visually with that. Because I was just replaying Astro's Playroom again, and I'm just like, God damn, this game looks so good, and I would love to see like a full-on, like, 3D colorful platformer on PS5. Aside from that and Ratchet and Clank,
Yeah.
and to like think of what like Naughty Dog could do with, their realistic style is fantastic, but I would just love to see what their interpretation of like a modern, more cartoony, stylized, next gen game would look like, and I'm sure it would be fantastic.
Yeah.
I don't think they're gonna do Jack and Daxter just because
Probably
not only
not.
did it end on such a strong note, but they also tried to, and they just couldn't get it to work with how the way they do things now. They're like
Their new engine.
They're not feeling. Yeah, they're not feeling it. So if they're not feeling it, they're not going to
Mhm.
push out and work on something that they're not, happy with.
Just do darker and grittier Jack and Daxter, like have the realistic
That's
art
what Jack
style.
2
like
was. Jack 2 was. Jack 2
Yeah.
and 3
I know,
were
but I'm
dark as
saying
hell.
Jack 2 was so dark. It was so
Darker
dark.
and better.
He had a goatee.
Yeah.
He spoke. He was all edgelordy
Yeah,
and
yeah,
angsty.
the
I'm
and
gonna
grit.
kill.
Yeah, the first thing he says is like, "What? I'm gonna
Baron
kill him."
Praxis.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm gonna kill Baron
Kill
Praxis.
Praxis.
I'm gonna kill him.
Daxter's like, chill,
just-
dude. You're cutting me with that edge.
Yeah, that goatee is a little pointy. watch where you're pointing that.
Edgelord Jack.
Ugh.
Oh man.
But
So should we go on to the themes of Last of Us Part 2?
Yeah.
Yeah. Theme, story.
Despair. That's what I'm getting off. That's what I'm getting off of this so far.
yeah, let's all. How about we all say
Just-
what we
That's
think
definitely
the
one of
theme of
them.
the game is? Let's say what we think the themes,
Despair.
the overall
Sure.
themes of the game is before we go into it.
Sure. Yep.
Do
I'm
you
gonna
wanna-
say despair.
Okay.
Okay.
How about you, Raj?
I have to agree with Fraser. Despair.
Okay. Delaney?
Forgiveness.
Okay. Blake?
Trauma.
Mm.
I'm going with Delaney. My thing was going to be forgiveness.
Forgiveness.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, I think that-
so with forgiveness, is it Ellie's? You don't have to like go into explicit detail about like exactly what happens, but is it more along the lines of Ellie's like work through the grief of losing Joel, and then like over time,
Mhm.
coming to terms with it at the very end?
Definitely.
Forgiving Abby, maybe later. It's funny because Fraser, you and I saying despair because I think you and I didn't beat this game yet, and so maybe that's why we're
We
not
did
getting
2 hours. We did
forgiveness
2 hours.
aspect.
It's definitely
Yeah, yeah.
despair. That's definitely one of them. Like, you're not wrong at all. It's the despair and the grief, that she feels over losing him. I think does initially end up like, taking over her, and like learning not just to forgive, Abby for what she did, but Joel for what he did. Because also, spoilers, it's shown in a flashback, she does learn the truth about what happened, and
Yeah.
that's a big reason why, like, in the beginning of this game, her and Joel like aren't on good terms. So she, finds that out. You find that out in a flashback, like halfway through the game, that she does know. So, and a big. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Rich.
Is that why she gets a tattoo to cover up the bite mark?
It's probably a big reason why. You know, it maybe not be explicitly said, but I think it's definitely a subtext of it for sure.
I think a big portion of it is just so that, you know, she doesn't want anyone else to know that she's infected. 'Cause, I mean, she didn't even tell Dina, you know, her girlfriend, that she was infected until there's a certain sequence where they're going through something, they're going through some spores, and Ellie falls and her mask breaks, and Dina's like, "Oh my god, no!" And she starts to take off her mask. She's like, "Don't fucking do it! I'm immune." And so I think it was one of those things where she didn't want to like scare anyone or like make people, you know, get concerned or anything. So she just covered up her bite to kind of just blend in.
It could definitely be symbolic too, though. Is that?
Yes.
I'm gonna give a spoiler for Frasier here, but that whole sequence that you mentioned, Danny, I when I played it, I thought it was really like, okay, here's what's happening. But then, like, very shortly afterwards, you know, when they're like their little hideaway, and like Dina's not feeling good and stuff like that, it's just like, I'm immune. And then like a few minutes later, Dina's to Ellie like, I'm pregnant. You know, it's like, what the hell's going on here?
It's shared.
What's going on in this game? Yeah. Like within 5 minutes, it's like, what the fuck?
God.
It's not a huge spoiler though. For it just complicates a few things with some other characters.
So since I just watched you know some of this morning, it's a little fresh in my mind. Early on in the game, Dina is already is said to already be pregnant. That's why Abby kind of goes off on her own, because she's all pissed off at whoever her companions are. That
now you're thinking of Mel, because there are two pregnant women in both sides, which I found to be kind of a contrived plot point, if I'm gonna be honest. Like between the two, like it was. Well, like I know people get pregnant all the time. It's just weird that, you know, there's gonna be, you know, two pregnant women.
People.
If I had two pregnant women in my Last of Us game, I'd have 2 nickels, which is, you know, not a lot, but it's weird that it happened more than once.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
I thought it was a necessary part of the game too, like in terms of the story and the theme as well.
It's there to like create the parallels between Ellie and Abby. Yeah. But like I don't know, I feel like they could have done it in a more natural way, because they're both kind of revealed like oh, Mel's pregnant, oh Dina's pregnant, like I don't know, like if it was just like, you know, a matter of fact stating for, you know, for one of them, maybe I would have felt different. It's a very small nitpick, but I don't know. It's just when you're telling a story, I know there's always going to be some overlap. Like maybe, you know, 2 characters have a similar situation, and, you know, 2 people are pregnant. But yeah, Joe, you have not gotten to the part where it's revealed Dina is pregnant yet. But yeah, you saw that Mel was pregnant, who is impregnated by Owen, who Abby also has a crush on, or was formerly they formerly dated, right, Dan?
The whole thing. Correct. There's some scenes later that you're gonna enjoy watching, Joe. I don't know.
Oh, I totally did.
You get to see Abby's pecs. Not her tits, her pecs.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's that. One thing about the game that I think is a major downgrade from the first game are the characters overall. Obviously you get to miss Joel, which is purposeful. You know, you really do miss his presence in the game, and the flashbacks only pour salt in the wound. But and I know we talked about this, Blake. Ellie in this game is like a completely different character than the first game, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It makes sense thematically. But she went from being like this super likable like kid who uses jokes to like cover up like the dark past that she has, to this just completely humorless husk of a person, which again makes kind of makes sense, but it doesn't make it any nicer to be around her. And you really see the contrast with the flashbacks too with her. Like when she's young Ellie, I think Ashley Johnson's performance is fantastic. As 19-year-old Ellie, it's so monotone. She does like it's not not her fault. It's the writing, because like every time like Dina makes a joke, trying to liven things up, Ellie's like, that's not true, like in her weird deep nasally voice. Now she's just such a miserable person, the whole game, ever, like even before Joel dies. Like, she's a lot less funny and likable than she was in the first game, and it just endears you to her a lot less. And I feel like a lot of the darker and more sadistic moments would have been more easily swallowed if she still had some of that charisma she had in the first game, if she was still had some ounce of likability, which she just doesn't have here, I feel.
I think it's just more me, just like, you feel bad. Like, I know we've all lost someone at one point or another, and just like that, like for me, thinking back to when I was in high school, which is only 3 years away from when Ellie lost Joel, and, found out everything that happened between him and the Fireflies, like, people, that's just part of the grieving, like, people grieve that way. And it, like you said, it makes sense thematically, and sure, maybe it doesn't endear people to her as much, but it just made me feel for her way, way more than, if she were still kind of trying to be plucky and failing at it. I don't know. I think I just kind of went with the flow, and in that regard, it worked for me. Like, just,
I could see
miserable
if,
game,
like,
miserable
if
character.
Yeah, I could see if you are basically told that, like, you have something, because if it's revealed to her that she knows that she has something that can be used to help humanity, and that was basically stolen. Maybe she's like living with survivor's guilt a little bit.
That's definitely a theme,
well,
the guilt.
Yeah.
That...
And on top of that, like, I'm not going to go into the very ending of the game just yet, but that once you figure out, like, the circumstances that happen, the things that happened right before Abby had killed Joel, like, it just makes what happened, like, Ellie's, the way her character is, it just makes made way even more, I can't talk, it made more sense.
Yeah.
And it,
so plot-wise, story-wise, is there a reason why?
What's up, Brad?
Is there a reason why Ellie couldn't then go and sacrifice herself?
That's another problem I have with the story, is that once she knows that there was a chance to cure humanity, that she doesn't, like, immediately go and try to do that. Like, I maybe I'm misremembering, but, like, she finds that out and just goes back to Jackson, and it's just like, do you really think there was only one doctor in the whole fucking world that could have done what Abby's dad wanted to do? Like, it's such a weird plot point. Like, I thought it would have been a better story if they really wanted to, is like her going out and, like, trying to find this, and then maybe, like, finding out that, like, all of the best brain surgeons are dead, and something like that. But yeah, well, that was always something that bothered me about the story.
I think that, like, just even from a storytelling standpoint, that'd be almost impossible, because I mean, at least with the Fireflies, she knew what where they were and everything, and they were going there to have this done for them. But I don't know, with that whole thing, I know that during the argument they had, like, because she promised, she's like, I'm going to leave forever. You're never going to see me again unless you tell me the truth. If you do, I swear I'll come back to Jackson with you. And so then that's when Joel admits it to her, and she's like, I'll go back to Jackson, but there's nothing more here. Like, I'll...
That just feels like a contrivance, though. Like just like giving her reason to because she swore to Joel. Well, he swore to her too, and he fucking lied.
Yes, but at the same time, she still has Dina and Jesse and all those other people that she still cares about there. So
in that flashback, does she even have Dina yet? Like, she wasn't with her at that time.
Yeah, she was with her. Yeah, because they kissed early on or whatever. Though they kissed. Well, I think that was one of those things where she had her one girlfriend, and then she was kind of will they won't they with Dina, and then she of course had Jesse and stuff and all that stuff. But yeah, I mean, I still don't feel she would have just on her own or whatever, at least without knowing where she wanted to go.
Yeah.
And she could have gone off like with Dina or with with someone else. And that's another problem I have with the game, is just that like there are these other side characters, like aside from Ellie and Abby, who you're playing as, like Dina and Jesse, but like just none of them are as memorable as as Joel and Ellie were in that first game. There's not that contrast. Like the closest you get to that is actually Abby and Lev, and even with them, you don't like feel their connection the same way you did with Joel and Ellie in the first game, and that's like super hard to replicate because they had such a meaningful dynamic. But with like Abby and Lev, like I couldn't really tell you like what made their relationship special, other than like she went out of her way to save this kid, and as far as like their personalities go, they don't really meaningfully clash or like come together in any sort of way, the way that Joel and Ellie did in the first game, I feel.
I think it was more like, Lev was kind of that thing of like, they kind of stood for innocence, where,
yeah,
they were helping her, like Abby, overcome some of her fears and some of her, shortcomings and everything. And they kind of, I think it was more, while Lev didn't necessarily grow like, maybe, well, like Ellie did in the first game, but Abby that's kind of the whole like contrast with this, is like Abby's story is basically Joel's story from The Last of Us 1, and Ellie's story is what we see with Abby. Well, we don't see it with Abby. It's her story leading up to where she kills Joel in the opening of the game. Like that's kind of like the two contrasting
It's the cycle
stories.
of violence.
Yes.
That's and obviously the ending is like ending the cycle, and which is meaningful in its own way. But yeah, I just, again, you're spending all this time with these characters, and again, I do think that that Abby and Lev, obviously Lev existed more as a way to humanize Abby, to like make you realize like, oh, this isn't like a fucking horrible monster who killed my favorite character. She had her reasons to do it, and again, if the tables had turned, who wouldn't have done what she did, in the circumstances. And it just, again, to show that violence begets violence, and it's not a super original theme about like how revenge doesn't really solve anything. Again, I just wish that, right, I just like wish that the characters along the way were stronger, because I couldn't tell you anything about fucking Jesse other than the fact that he gets fucking cucked by Dina for Ellie. That's really that's really the only thing I know about him. He's, and so when he dies, I'm just like, okay, whatever. And Dina's a bit more likable because you spend a little bit more time with her, and their romance is obviously the part that is like the one thing keeping Ellie human
together
at this point, which obviously she inevitably fucks up at the end, but obviously we'll get to that when we discuss the ending. But yeah, that's probably my biggest problem with the game, is that the characters overall just aren't as strong. Abby's probably my favorite character in the game, aside from Joel and Ellie in the flashbacks. But in like the present sense, like Abby, she's been through a lot too. She's been through her father being killed, knowing that humanity is destroyed because, not necessarily destroyed, but at least at the time, because of her father being killed like that. So she's been through it a lot too, but she has a lot more charisma and likability again than Ellie in this game. So like at the end, I was like, damn, I fucking hope Abby wins. Like, I was really, as much as I love Ellie in the first game, this isn't the Ellie I knew.
So who exactly is Abby?
She's the daughter of the doctor that Joel kills.
Okay.
In the first
Or
game.
the surgeon, I should say.
All right. So then she's just like on a conquest to like track him down, and that's why.
And murder him. Yeah.
She brained him.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, she's on a she's got some bloodlust for Joel.
Gotcha.
For sure.
I have to say though, was she gonna just kill anyone she met named Joel? Because she doesn't like find out his name is Joel Miller. Like, she just assumes that he's Joel.
Hey Joel.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I mean, to be
Like, what
fair,
if this was like-
they were at the Firefly. She was a Firefly. Tommy was a Firefly. They had all sorts of records. Tommy Miller, Joel Miller, brothers and everything. And like, if she's going around just killing a bunch of random people,
Yeah, I guess that's
Joel,
true.
she'd probably
Yeah.
not be super, you know. 'Cause, I mean, they you know, worked their way through the snow to get to Jackson. I don't think they were drawing a whole lot of attention. I mean, obviously, in that sort of world, you don't want to draw attention to yourself because that could
Yeah.
Mhm.
kill you. So, yeah.
Yeah.
But as far as Abby goes, like, and her father, I feel like I would have liked to have spent a little more time with them instead of, you know, kind of. It's the way I feel about, you know, like almost like in the anime, like specific. I'll talk about Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood really quick. Like in Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood compared to the original Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, they basically they basically take their character's sole like character trait and personality, and they shove it all into this like. So it's very over the top and it's like too much, for instance. Whereas like in the original, they basically, you know, you take time to like these characters over the course of the episodes. With Abby's dad, Jerry, he was like, oh, he must be a nice guy because he, you know, he helped a zebra out and, you know, he seems likable, and they have some good moments with Abby and her together. And then the thing that I kind of liked the most that they touched on was that he was kind of conflicted about what he was doing with Ellie. Like, wasn't just like, yep, let's just slice open her head and take out her brain and let's do this. Like, he, you know, was very, you know, troubled by
I feel like
it.
that's what they're
And
going
I
to do
feel like-
in the show.
and that's what I hope.
I bet you they're going
that's
to
what I
have a
was gonna
full
go into.
episode.
Yes,
Like a full
I really
episode
hope that they spend more
dedicated
time
to-
with Jerry and Abby and getting to know them personally instead of just like, you know, he saved a zebra. He seems like a good dad to Abby, and he's troubled by, you know, what he has to do with Ellie. I hope they explore that more.
Mhm.
That's one thing I hope they explore more.
Yeah,
Because that would have made
I do
me
too.
maybe feel a little more, you know, just that little extra layer, I guess.
Put some humanity into it.
Yeah, inject some much needed humanity into what is an otherwise extremely depressing, despair filled game and story.
Mm-hmm.
Because yeah, even with
Sure,
Mav's
happy.
character and stuff, that was even, you know, all that's miserable and depressing and freaky too.
Yeah.
Yeah, Seraphites.
Now
They're a little culty.
Just a
with
smidge.
the with the sorry.
Go ahead,
Whatever.
Josh.
With the theme of, like, you know how the last game played out over the course of a year, does this game also play out over the course of a year with the individual seasons?
No, it's like 3
No.
days mostly, actually. Like there's
Yes.
there's like the prologue and the epilogue, which are in like different time periods, but most of the game takes place over a 3-day stretch. It like starts with you playing as Ellie for those 3 days, and then it goes back in time to day one for Abby's, you know, quest during it, which is a really neat you know, structure, and I think it leads to a lot of interesting things because you get to see all the people that Ellie fucking murders in her run and see them as people, and like it really makes you kind of reflect on it because again, I do feel that, you know, overall Abby is a better character, and I also think that like Owen is a better like character also than like Dina or Jesse or anyone like that. At least I can remember things about him. But it does make you actually, you know, the way it's structured. I do wish that it overlapped a bit better, because there are only like a couple of segments where, you know, Ellie and Abby actually interact, and I wish there was more of that to like see him from the different perspectives, because so much of Abby's story is not connected to what's going on with Ellie's story with Lev and everything. I feel like they could have done more to like make those things mesh. Like there was no reason why like so much of it had to take place on like an island away from everything. So, you know, it just kind of made it feel, you know, it could have been more meaningful if more of it overlapped.
Do you think that The Last of Us Part 2 would have been a better game if it just solely divorced themselves from Joel and Ellie and focused strictly on Abby?
No, I don't think so. Wouldn't have to wait.
No,
Yeah,
I don't think so
because
either.
then you're just playing
The
as the
impact would not
person
be
that
there.
murdered Joel, and you know,
But
because that's
alright,
the thing.
well,
Like, if you don't
hear me out.
experience
What-
Ellie's
what-
side
what
of the
if-
story, go ahead, Joe.
What if it was like the case that you get to know Abby, you get to know like her story, because it basically is like a 4-year time skip of like her journey to like go around to try to find these people that murdered her father, and then part 3 could crescendo into them meeting, holy shit, it's this Joel, oh my god, and then shit happens.
That actually could be interesting, or like that, or like the ending of 2 is her like finally getting to Joel and killing him. It would make his death less shocking, obviously, because that's a big part of the impact of part 2 is how out of nowhere and brutal his death is. But I mean that definitely would have made people hate Abby less for sure, because I don't think a lot of the people who really hate this game played it past the point where you start playing as Abby, if they played it at all, to be honest. So it would have definitely forced more people to understand her better and engage with her character a bit more. Yeah. So that would be an interesting approach, actually.
Yeah, because I mean, if you think about the theme of the game is the last of us. Us could be last of humanity essentially. So it doesn't necessarily need to be Joel and Ellie. You didn't have to really play as them. You could have played as another survivor and their perspective of navigating the world and their trials and tribulations along their journey to having their inevitable futures bisect at Jack.
I know what you're trying to say, but I think that's stepping way too far into the Marvel shit. Like we got enough characters going on.
The Last of Us cinematic universe.
Yeah. No, I agree with what you say, though. I think that's a very unique idea, but it's I mean, obviously it didn't happen, but it would be cool. Maybe it's like a DLC, that'd be kind of fun.
Yeah, they haven't made a DLC for this one yet, aside from the no return mode, which isn't really DLC as much as it's just a new mode. But if they ever did expand more on Abby's character, and I doubt she'll return for part 3 if they ever make it, but because it seems like her story's pretty much wrapped up. This is Ellie's story primarily, and I feel like maybe if what we talked about is her going off to see if there is possibility for her to cure humanity, that would be what happens in part 3. But they surprised us already with what happened in 2. So
I'm basically done trying to guess what folks do, because even with the trailers, the way they showed the Naughty Dog does the trailers, it's much like Marvel, where they'll show you a certain scene and it'll be a different character, or it'll be a different set of circumstances. You never know what they're gonna do, so it's just wait for them to do their thing and just enjoy the ride when it gets to you.
Yeah, the controversial part I remember is one of the trailers. It showed Ellie being pulled aside, and she's like, "What are you doing here?" And the look on her face is complete shock. And then in the trailer, it's Joel. He's like, "You think I'd let you do this on your own, baby girl?" And in the actual game, at this point, Joel's already dead, and it just turns out to be fucking Jesse. But her reaction is still weirdly so surprised to see someone that it wouldn't have been Jesse, because her and Jesse aren't that fucking close. So I don't know, that always felt a little bit misleading to me.
I mean, you kind of have to be close if you're spending 5 years. You grew up together in your teen years, and you're doing patrols, and have the same circle of friends. So I mean, I would say they're close. I mean, that's one of the only few people that she's actually spent a lot of time with and gotten to know. So I mean, I can kind of I think,
spending more time with these characters would have been a lot more meaningful. I hate to say it, having just combine Jesse and Dina's character in just one person. Have them spend more time with that person. Make it so Ellie doesn't find out that Dina's pregnant until a little bit later, so she can be there more often. Because honestly, the segments with Dina and everything, where you kill one person and she kills the other, they felt really fun to play in that way. It added an extra layer to the combat, and so much of it is just Ellie by herself, which again makes sense too. She is slowly pushing the people out of her life in her revenge quest. But again, it would have made you feel a little bit more connected to your side characters if you had to spend more time with, you know, one or the other versus like splitting it up into two different people. So, you know, like different ways they could have done it that I feel may or may not have been better, but I feel like it would have been better if they would have focused a little bit more on just one side character who's there more often.
What would you say the differentiating gameplay aspect is between this game and the first game? Is
just open-endedness, I'd say. Just being able
More
to
variety.
approach it in a lot more variety. I will say the first one had more visual variety than this one. This one, like, so much of it is just in Seattle, in like an urban area that's kind of overgrown. Whereas the first one, you know, you get all these different locations, all these different places in the different season. Yeah, like obviously the winter segment's beautiful, and you get a little bit of that in like the beginning. But most of the game is just in Seattle, in this gray, dreary city, and you know, it's obviously much visually a huge upgrade, but you know, it's a little bit more drab in comparison to the first game. But yeah, overall, it's still just a lot more, you know, open-ended. Gives you a lot more options to approach combat the way you actually want to do it. You can go in guns blazing, you know, especially if you're on the lower difficulties. You know, you could approach stealth in a lot of different ways. You know, it's a really fun game. Just,
so
you know.
so it ultimately takes place in Seattle, right?
Most of it,
Yes.
yeah. Like 90% of it.
Is Seattle like an explorable city then?
Not like quite. You know, there's like recognizable landmarks and stuff, apparently.
The first day with Ellie is the most open, explorative part of Seattle in that game.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the best part.
So it's not like infamous Second Son.
No,
No,
nothing
no.
like that
Nothing
at
like
all.
that? Okay.
No, it's not open world. It's just they gave you this one section of the city and its surrounding area to explore and do, you know, pick up some side stuff and throw in a couple little Easter eggs and things like that. But other than that, it's you go into the city, like you explore some stuff, you see things, but
Since we only got about 10 minutes left before we have to stop, I feel like we should now talk about the ending, one of the most controversial aspects of it. Sorry about this, Raj and Fresh. If you guys want to like mute us, if you really don't want to know exactly what happens,
Earmuffs.
you can,
No.
or you can hear it out. I mean,
No, I'm
people-
gonna hear about it one way or the other,
That is
either
true.
right now or 6 hours from now when I watch the.
I'm gonna skip all the way towards the very, very ending.
okay.
Because like the what is that faction called? The Rattlesnakes or something like
who
that?
fucking cares?
Yes,
that,
the
part was so,
Rattlesnakes.
that part was so
It
pointless.
doesn't matter. It's this is What's up, Rush?
No, I was just gonna say I'm actually gonna get off a little bit early. I have to finish some other work real quick. So perfect timing for the last, because I'm actually gonna pick up where I left off and play the ending.
Awesome.
Nice.
Okay.
Cool. Nice.
Yeah.
All right.
Bye, Raj.
See you guys.
Thank you, Raj.
But with
Man, that Raj guy, right now.
I know. Fuck that guy. Doctor. But yeah, so basically, long story short, Ellie's, you know, basically settled down because, you know, she kind of failed in her revenge quest to kill Abby at first because Abby spared her and let her go.
And Dina, more specifically.
Yeah, because Dina was pregnant. And so she kind of like settles down with Dina and Jesse's baby. So
JJ.
you know, they kind of have this little, this little cute life. Because Jesse dies, so they can't be a throuple and raise the baby all together. But so and then Tommy comes and he's like, "Oh, I know where Abby is," and he's like, "You have to go get her," and he like really guilts Ellie into doing it.
Yeah.
And Ellie's having like all these PTSD flashbacks to, you know, what happened, and eventually just like leaves in the night, you know, basically breaking Dina's heart. Goes to the place where Abby and Lev are, and they've both been.
I think it is.
Yeah,
right?
in California. Yep, it's like on the the ocean.
Quick question: how long of a time skip is it?
5
Like
a
months,
year?
several months.
Not
It's
long.
several months. It says.
Several
Mhm.
months.
It's not long.
Yeah, so the baby's like really small, you know, he's really cute, and it, you know, it's obviously, Ellie doing this is like the last straw, for Dina, unfortunately. But when she gets there, Abby's all tied up. She's been taken in by this, she's basically a prisoner. She's like hanging up, and then
She's lost all
Ellie,
of her gains.
Yeah, all her gains are gone. It's really sad. She's no longer swole.
She's abless.
I think this is probably intentional. At this point, like they almost look exactly the same. Like Abby's hair is cut short. She's a lot skinnier. At this point,
She's emaciated at that point.
Yeah. And so they fight, they brawl. Abby bites off 2 of Ellie's fingers during the fight.
I want to talk about.
Yeah, I know it's one thing that I already know why you want to talk about that too, Blake.
Yeah,
but but then Ellie has a flashback to Joel while she's like drowning Abby because they're on the beach, and like it's like a nice memory that she has.
It's
and
a half second
of
too.
him
like
and
it's
of
a
like
blink and you
her.
miss it.
Yeah, exactly. And she's in this memory, she basically opens up to the idea of forgiving Joel. And this is when she decides to forgive Abby. I mean, obviously, she's killed 500 fucking people, at least 5 of them named Mateo over the course of the game. But
very popular name.
but she forgives Abby and lets her and Lev escape on a boat. And then when she goes back to her cottage, Dina's gone with the baby. She tries to play the guitar that Joel left to her. But she really can't anymore because of her fingers, and just leaves. And that's essentially what happens, at the end.
She needs to get good.
I know.
That's what you gotta do.
Fucking the guitarist of Black Sabbath could play? Why can't you?
Yeah, right.
He was missing his fingers.
Yeah.
Well,
Fingertips.
That's why you wanted to talk about that, Blake.
Well, that was a little bit about it, but it was more so that was a huge positive connection she had with Joel.
Yeah.
Was that guitar. And that's where the trauma part that I was like talking about comes in. Abby sees her dad get killed. Everybody sees everyone get killed here, but
Abby was in the room when the doctor was shot.
No, like the aftermath. I'm sorry.
She shows up afterward.
Okay.
Yeah, she shows up afterward, but either way, she sees him like dead,
Yeah.
That's the point. So yeah, it's just that, so like one of the very, very few positive things that Ellie has in her life, was that connection with Joel through the guitar. I'm not even like thinking specifically music, but it's and now that she more or less had it taken away, with I can't remember what fingers she lost, but I know
it's these 2. So
those 2.
Yeah, she.
Okay, yeah. I mean, it's gonna be really hard to like play, but you could do it.
That's what Tony Iommi did. He put little metal tips on his fingers.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's also like there's some really incredible things that I've seen people push themselves to do in real life, actually, in order to play an instrument. But anyway, that part, yes. But then the other thing was it's at the end, it's like, God damn it, enough is enough. Like my goodness, you gotta know when to quit. I think.
That's the point. Like she pushes it one step too far, and that's what makes her lose it all. Essentially, she loses, her ability to play Pearl Jam anymore. She loses her hot Jewish girlfriend. She loses
Yellow Ledbetter.
Her cute. She can't play Yellow. Yeah, she can't play Future Days anymore. She loses her cute little half Asian baby. Like everything, that was good in her life essentially is gone now. But she still leaves, and there's still that faint sense of hope because maybe she can't be forgiven now because of what she did. But maybe, she let go of his memory. And there is some hope that she can learn to forgive herself essentially for everything that's happened. So it does leave on kind of a hopeful note, in this really bleak and sad game. So I like the ending. I think the ending is one of the better parts of it, one of the more unique parts of it. Again, you could say like, well, she killed all these people at this point. Like, how is one more person?
They were trying to kill her,
but it's
too,
like
so
it was never about that. Yeah. yeah, they were, merciless hunters as well. Obviously she beats a woman to death who's begging for her life.
Well, I mean, hey, that's not fair though. She was already dying.
She was gonna die anyway. So, but yeah, it's, that's another aspect again that's pretty controversial, but ultimately, it makes sense thematically for what they were trying to do. So if the game ended with Ellie killing Abby, it would have been antithetical to what the message the game was trying to get across in the end. So
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that was my big thing watching that, was like, everyone's like, oh, it's all about revenge and the cycle of violence. It's like, sure, those are parts of it, but yeah, forgiveness being the main theme of it, especially, by the end, like that's what I really liked about it the most, is because, by the end, like, it's, they ended on a positive, sort of thematic element and emotional feeling. And yeah, like that ending sequence, like, it gets to a point where you just want it all to stop. Like, you don't want either of them fighting. You don't want it. You just want it all to stop and end. And then that split second flash of Joel, like that got me. And then the final talk, like that shows like right before the events of the game kickoff, like that hurt. Like that was beautiful. And one of those things that Troy Baker does so well, he delivered those lines so well, and just, it was beautiful. And I'm glad that it ended. Yeah, again, it's sad, Ellie coming back to basically nothing, but like it leads open to that open window into that beautiful sunset where, there's still some hope that, Ellie can get on with her life and come to terms with everything that's happened.
Yeah.
Yep. So long story short, go woke, go broke. This game.
Yeah.
Do it!
Yeah.
Just do it! Get this liberal agenda out of my game. Like,
Oh god.
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
that's pretty good.
I can't wait to actually, sit down and watch the rest of how this game unfolds.
yeah, I'm interested to see what you think.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good. It's a good.
Before we go,
overall,
I
it's a
gotta
good
do
game.
my obligatory showing of all the games. We got that. We got the same steelbook case. I know
Nice.
this isn't the second game, but
Doesn't matter.
Right.
It's
yeah,
okay.
you get
got
the
it.
nice little contrast between the two covers, which is awesome.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And then we got the Last of Us Part 2 statue with Ellie playing the guitar. And then that's the signed
Is that in the case?
poster that I got with Troy Baker's autograph, Shannon Woodward's autograph, and then who plays Dina. So Joel, Dina, and then Arn Meyer is like kind of one of the big community people for Naughty Dog. So he was there too. And then
I actually don't have these things. These are just pictures of these things that someone else has.
Yeah, right. This one's legit though. That's actually me.
Yeah.
And that's Troy Baker when he was
That's
at
cool.
when I worked at GameStop.
Nice.
So yeah, that was
That's
Nice.
cool. That's cool.
really
Little
awesome.
twins
moment.
right
It was
there.
super cool.
Aw.
Yeah.
And then these are Troy
Good.
Baker's shoes.
This is his
This is a lock of
mocap
Troy Baker's
uniform.
hair.
His unwashed mocap suit. I got off
Right.
eBay for a stupid amount of money.
You can still
Smell it.
smell him on it.
Yep.
Nice. All right. Well, unfortunately, I have to get going. So.
All right, man.
That's fine.
Well, hey,
It's a good talk.
hey, if everybody listened this far into the podcast,
You need to get a fucking life.
I
Go
promise.
review bomb some games.
Yeah,
do
I-
something meaningful with your life.
I promise I'll do better with being a little bit more informed about the things we talk about in the future. We just happen to have been on a streak of a lot of video games I know vaguely a few things about, but
Next game we have to do one that you know a lot about. I feel
Yeah.
like we gotta discuss this. So
yeah.
Next time we're gonna really try to find one that the Frash knows
Yeah.
more things about.
There we go.
Yeah, we're
Yeah,
gonna do a
thanks
deep
for
dive
watching, everyone.
of Jack and Daxter. But yeah, thank you all for watching. Blake, thank you for hosting, and we'll see you guys
As
next
always,
time.
yep. Yep. Please be sure to like
Bye,
and subscribe.
everybody.
Okay. Peace.
Bye, guys.